TORC Pro-2 truck has 800 horsepower, 18 inches of wheel travel, and a robust tube frame chassis. These trucks are impressively tough, yet nimble enough to power through jumps, tight turns, and everything else the track can throw at them. This grueling and challenging terrain demands equally impressive truck engineering. 2011 TORC Pro-2 champ Bryce Menzies and his team will show us how these purpose-built race trucks soar 200 feet through the air lap after lap and make it to the finish line. On Popular Mechanics, how they do that.
My name is Bryce Menzies. I race professional off-road racer. I race a Pro-2 class in short course racing. It's kind of like Supercross with 4,000-pound trucks. You know, you're flying into each other, fenders are flying off, crowd's going crazy, so it's just one of the best sports I've been involved in.
Route 66 Raceway in Joliet, Illinois is only a half a mile long, but is home to some of the most intense and ferocious racing this sport has ever seen.
I race Pro-2, which is a two-wheel drive. It's about 800 horsepower, 18 inches of wheel travel, fully tube chassis. We build them in-house from the ground up. Our crew, we usually have about 12 guys that work full-time for our team.
Team Menzies is putting together Bryce's Pro-2 truck to take on 20 other trucks in the heated night race. This is the last race of the weekend, a little over halfway through the 14-race season.
What you're going to see is an all-out battle. People jumping really far. It's just going to be insane. Anything can happen in our sport. There's so many elements. A lot of banging today just because it's the last race of the weekend.
So let's see what happens when a Pro-2 truck tackles a jump, takes a hard corner, and sets up for the next jump. As the Pro-2 truck approaches the jump, it's traveling at about 60 miles per hour. The moment the front tires hit the base of the jump, Bryce lifts off the gas for a split second. The front suspension compresses nearly all the way to the bump stops. Then the rear tires hit and compress that same amount, and Bryce gets on the gas hard. As the truck launches into the air, Bryce is off the gas completely. But if the truck is flying a little sideways due to his approach, he will countersteer in midair so the front tires are pointed in the right direction for landing. The truck is soaring about 10 feet above the ground and traveling at about 50 miles per hour, depending on the steepness of the jump. The front and rear suspension absorb the impact of the 4,000-pound truck landing from 10 feet in the air, and the shocks and springs are compressed all the way to the bump stops. As soon as the tires make contact with the ground, Bryce rolls back on the throttle smoothly and prepares for the next corner. Bryce's truck actually has two brake pedals. The pedal on the right controls the brakes at all four wheels. The pedal on the left controls just the rear brakes. As he comes into a corner, Bryce will squeeze the main brake pedal to slow the truck down, and then quickly stab the left pedal to lock up the rear brake for an instant and help pitch the truck into a slide. At this point, the truck is leaned over, relying on the truck's anti-sway bar to keep the body lean in check. Bryce rolls on the throttle and gets ready to cross the finish line. Now let's check in with Team Menzies crew chief Charlie Schleve for a detailed look at the systems of a Pro-2 truck and how it can survive jump after jump. The suspension is the key component in these trucks absorbing these massive jumps.
The difference between a stock Dodge pickup and one of these cars, a stock Dodge pickup, a control arm is probably 13 inches long. These trucks will see 30-inch A-arm, so your pendulum point is just that much greater. The upper lower control arms are actually your anchors that hold the whole suspension in place. I mean, you've got spindles and you've got tie rods and rack. All that works in unison just to steer the car, make the car work.
The shocks are really the heart of the suspension. Pro-2 trucks use what's known as an external bypass shock. This design allows the team to tune the dampening characteristics for rebound and compression of the shock by simply turning the valves on the shock body. On a non-bypass shock, the damper would have to be disassembled, costing the team time. As the piston travels inside the shock body, the oil and internal valving stack determines how firm or soft the shock is, while the external bypass tubes allow that oil to bypass through them. Depending upon how those bypass valves are adjusted, the team can tune the suspension for particular course conditions.
At a race at a given weekend, I would say you probably spend 6 to 10 hours just on shock valving. But you don't know what you have until you get there. I would say it's probably the most critical part on the whole car.
These trucks are 4,000 pounds and we're flying them sometimes 200 feet in landing. So it's just unbelievable what these trucks will do and they're capable of. We slam each other so hard and you'd think right away the truck's broke, but it's still running and we keep going.
These trucks use a heavily gusseted and reinforced solid or live rear axle suspension. They use 4 link arms and a double shock arrangement in the rear with 20 inches of wheel travel allowed by TORC, whereas a stock truck would use an old-fashioned leaf spring solid axle rear suspension with 8 inches of travel.
The basic back of this car, the best way I could explain it is there's 4 links that hold it in the position. There's 2 on top, there's 2 on the bottom. And what that does, it keeps the rear end centered in the vehicle. The shocks hook to that, the sway bar hooks to that, coil springs hook to that. The reason that they run 18 inches is because they're trying to keep this frame rail from going up too high in the back, and they're trying to keep a minimum spec so everybody kind of has to follow it. 18 inches means when this shock right here comes up to full droop, when this strap right here gets tight. When that strap gets tight, it's at full extension. It needs to be 18 inches between those 2 points. The rear end has to be able to move freely. These things will move individually up and down, 18 inches at a time. And the other tire may be all the way down, the other one's all the way up. So they need to have room to just move around that much.
Once all the compression travel is used up, the suspension will bottom out on a bump stop.
What the bump stop will do is over the big jumps, it actually softens the landing so the driver doesn't get such a shock when they land. So it'll actually cushion the ride at the very end. Instead of hitting 2 hard surfaces together, it actually cushions that blow at the very bottom of the suspension. There's a Schrader valve right underneath here where you put nitrogen in it, and then it's just got a little bit of oil to keep the seals wet, but basically it's just a nitrogen charged shock. Just a lot smaller version of what you see right here.
This long travel rear suspension is the key to surviving the jumps. The average street 4x4 would have less than half that amount, and that's one reason why street trucks ride roughly over big bumps, and why they'd brake attempting jumps like these.
It's so much different than driving a regular truck. When you drive a regular truck, it's on asphalt. You go try to jump a regular truck, you're gonna break the thing in half, and this thing, it's built for this. There's so much stuff going on at once. You're flying through the air, half the time you can't see. You got 20 other trucks around you at the same time. So, going from this to a regular truck is just 100% different.
The TORC Pro-2 trucks use a race-prepped V8 and are allowed up to 460 cubic inches with 850 horsepower, topped by a 4-barrel carburetor.
It's based off just a basic V8 design, but it's modified in every way that you can think of. It's actually right up front here. If you look at this box here, they do this box right here for safety. If the car would flip, fuel is in the carburetor. They want to keep the fuel off the driver. They put a cover on it for that reason, but that's actually the engine location right there. The engine that's in this race car right here is a 430 cubic inch aluminum block, basically highly modified. Makes somewhere in the area of 800, 850 horsepower. Durability obviously is a concern we always have because of the big horsepower you're making with these engines, but really we got a great engine package. We've had a lot of good success with it. Life expectancy on these motors, I would have to say is somewhere in the average of half a season. You do a freshen up on them, bearings, seals, things like that, and then you should be able to finish out the year with it. They don't allow us to run fuel injection, so we have to run a carburetor. That's one of the rules that they've always stuck with, which I do think is a good rule in TORC. And I think in some ways they're a little bit easier to tune at a racetrack, and I do think they make a little bit more power.
All that horsepower requires the team to run 112 octane fuel.
These trucks, they carry a fuel load in the back. At the start of a race, they do carry quite a bit of weight until they lighten up a little bit.
The race with VP fuel, it's 112 octane. Usually when we go around, it's like a gallon a lap. It's unbelievable how much fuel these things take to go around this track and how expensive it is, but you're dumping so much fuel in these engines to get them to go.
This vehicle is equipped with a Turbo 400. It's a GM-based transmission. I would say 99% of the cars out here run them. The General Motors transmission is a highly durable unit, and they're relatively, in the racing world, they're relatively cheap to build. 3-speed, got reverse, just a basic transmission that you'd see like in an old Chevrolet pickup. It's got what's called a manual valve body on the transmission. So he physically has to do all the shifting. It's not a manual, but it's an automatic, but he has to shift it to make it go.
We're new to TORC. This is our second full season, but it's like a grassroots family. There's just a great camaraderie.
The whole sport itself is very family orientated. This race team really functions on that. Everybody's very close. I think that's what makes any business a good business, but I think it's what makes this race team a great one. Frame on one of these cars is all chromoly 4130. Design spec on these cars is actually done on a computer. The frame rails and those things have to be done to a scale that they give you. So you have to follow a certain dimension for the base of the chassis, and then you can build it basically however you want from there. This is the roll bar. Generally the whole car is made out of this tubing that you see right here. This is what holds everything together. Holds engine together, holds transmission together, holds everything. This is your heart and soul of the whole deal. This is what keeps you safe.
To cut down on weight, Pro-2 trucks run a fiberglass body.
On the Pro-2, fiberglass body. Reason being, lightweight, flexible, can take a hit. They come this color, which makes it nice. You don't have to paint them, don't have to wrap them. Just put some stickers on it and you go racing right away. Really just a real lightweight deal. That's why we run fiberglass. If you stop by here later, you'll see 5,000 people that want a rear fender. That's one thing they do. They become souvenirs.
I do what I do because I love the sport. I love being in the dirt. I love competing. Getting that feeling of every time you're lining up on the line, you know that you get those butterflies. You know something bad could always happen, but you know you're going to do your best, and you have a team that's surrounding you that you want to perform your best to. So I think that's kind of why I enjoy doing what I do.
Thanks to their advanced suspension system, lightweight tube frame chassis, and a highly modified V8 engine, these short-track Pro-2 racing trucks are able to withstand jump after punishing jump and power their way to the finish line.
I'm Bryce Menzies, and that's how it's done.